All right, so week 6, your start here, and I just want to remind, because I got some good feedback about this, that this is the part of the video, or this is the part of week 6 on your Monday item that you're taking notes, okay? So these are not the notes you're taking, these were the notes I took to remind myself of the topics I wanted to talk about, but for you, these are your class topics, okay? So just to go over the work first, we're finishing up this search engine optimization for e-commerce this time. So nothing new there except taking notes. And then I've decided, based on the fact that last week, I had you actually do your push to the local or to the remote repo last time where you're publishing those changes out. So I thought it would be good actually to take this class a little further than I have taken this class in the past, which is really just the next logical step of actually making changes into a repo, which is really called Git branching. Okay, so because this concept can often be one of the stumbling blocks for students, I decided we'd do two things for this. First is I'm going to have you go through and it doesn't take very long. It took me a few minutes to get through it. And it was really helpful to cover some of the basics that we've already talked about. Extending those basics is always a good idea. But what you'll do is you'll go all the way to the final push, right? So this is going to walk you through a couple 20-something steps, but they're really, and again, this is great review here. So I really like this. So I want you to go through this entire process. And then when you're at the very end, when you're at the final push, then take a print screen, upload it to your shared with everyone, and then put a link to that in here or embed it either way. Okay, so that's step one. And then step two, I'm going to actually have you do this branch, creating this branch into your local system. And I'd played around with this before I had started today, and I did like add image as my branch, right? So you could also call it something like dev, right? It could be also a branch name, so you're just doing development. So the idea of understanding these branches and how they work, and then what I'm going to have you do is just do a simple, branch, make some changes, and then merge that back in. Okay, so I did this myself on my local version of Windows here, and I noticed when I first did it, it was a little wanky on Visual Studio Code, and probably just because I was getting used to it. So in this case, I did the whole process of creating the branch, right? Doing the changes to the branch, committing the changes, and then adding those, merging those changes back in, which you're learning in that tutorial. But do know, and I suspect some of you may already be using the integration of Git into VS Code. I've noticed it's like you use one or the other, right? So let me just, and really doing Git status is always good let me just do that again. Okay, so that you have some changes that you're doing here right now. Everything's good. I'm on the master branch, right? So then I would do Git branch, and then I would call it like dev, right? So in this case, I've created the dev branch. Now I'm not on the dev branch, and I can tell that because of here. So then I would do a git checkout dev. Okay, good. So then I could come over here. Now I'm on the dev branch. So I've created a branch of my code. And the idea, it's kind of like when you refer back to, think about the semantic symverb that we did last time, that this is a similar way, this is a way you can implement that in concept wise, is you're making, like, you're leaving your master branch of your code alone, you're creating your master track, you're leaving that, you're creating a branch, you're doing some changes, and then if you like those changes, you merge them back into the master, and then you can push that to the repo, the remote repo. So there's various techniques that people use depending on the level of code they're writing, okay? So then I could come in here and I could go, right, just making some simple changes. I just want you to implement something, right, into the code, just into your, so that you can see this, right? So now if I do a get status, what I can see is that there's a change here. Yep, I've made a change into the code. Right, and what I was trying to do that was throwing me off a little bit, I was actually trying to go back to the master and see the unchanged code, but for some reason, and I think it was more of a VS Code thing than anything, the second time I did it, it worked fine. I'm not sure why. But you can also tell down here, if you look at the bottom, you can tell that VS Code is registering that you're now looking at the other version. So actually I'm going to try something just with you all here. So I should be able to do get checkout master, and doing that, and now I'm back on master, but what I was seeing, it was not updating the view that I had here. It was just something weird that I think there was just a little tweak that needed to be done. Okay, so I'm going to do get checkout dev. Good, so now I'm back on the dev branch. So again, I think it's minor, but if you run into that, I just wanted you to know. So now I'm going to go ahead and do, my get add. So add that into there, and then get commit -m updating content. And you want to say this on dev branch, okay, because you're committing that. Cool. So then I would do get, I so want to do change directory here. It's so funny. So then I would do get. Now, by the way, you should be taking a few notes here. That way, when you go through and do this work, it'll be helpful to remembering some of this, but also running through that tutorial will help as well. Now I'm going to do checkout master. Okay, good. Now I'm back on there. And then I'm going to do a get merge. Oh, my bad. Get merge dev. So what that does then is it places those changes, right? So now I have the changes that I've done on the dev branch back into the master branch. And then I could do something like get, I believe it's branch D, and telling that to delete dev, and then that would delete that as well. So then you don't also, if you want to see here, you don't actually see that as well. And then you could do the get push, okay? So I want you to do that process of modifying. I'm noticing, I gotta check this out, that my Google Drive is somehow getting all my repo. I'm not sure what happened there. So I get GIT to check that out. So having said this, okay, so that's, I want you to, because you could actually, and this is very common, to actually push these branches into the remote repo. But in this case, I'm just having you create one. And actually what I might do here is actually have you, I think I will modify this to on this, so you'll do two print screens. As you do one of doing the challenges, and the second one of actually doing a get log. Okay, so get log here, so that I can see your commit here. You could by the way, you could also give me a link to your remote repo log. That's always a cool thing too. So you could give me either one. And what I mean by that, let me see if I have get up here. I think I do. Yeah. So up here on your repo, on your repo that is in this case a site, you can also go to commits. And then you can see that. So this is the other way, and maybe actually now that I've said this, I think I will change and actually have you do this in here. So good, yeah. So what you want to do then on the second one, instead of doing a print screen, I will just have you give me a link to your commits on your remote repo on GitHub, right? So you can just do commits on the master, right? And again, because we didn't do a git push on from the branch, if we had done that, we would now see a branch out on the master, but I had you not do that yet, just because that can get a little more confusing, and I'm extending the idea here further than I have in the past. So anyway, I'll modify this to actually tell you just to give me a link to your remote. Okay. All right, so the last item on this work that you have, and again, you should be taking a few notes here, is a topic that most people find interesting that to learn about if they don't already know. And so it's user interaction and user experience. So I've actually found that updated a file. I had an older one from before. So what I want you to do is watch this video, and then like we've done in the past, sometimes I want you to research the concepts and find resources that help you extend your knowledge. And again, people come in at different levels here. So talking about, your understanding of it, extending that, finding resources that help extend everybody else who wants to follow your discussion would be good here. Okay, so that's what we're going to do on this one. All right, so there we go. We've covered the work, and so I would expect to see some class topics there. But also under class topics, I want to tell you that one of the things I meant to say when we were looking at hosting is I've recently moved over several sites into the Firebase hosting. And so this is another really great, so firebase.google.com. And the thing I love about Firebase is it gives you HTTPS. HTTPS, you got that? So it gives you because normally on hosting you actually have to pay for an HTTPS, which is a secured certificate. And you'll hear more about this when we start talking about e-commerce next week. But the idea that you have a secured website, and even if your website doesn't really need a secure, because secure would be more important if you're logging in, even if you're not doing that, Google is now punishing in the sense that it's diminishing search results for your site if you're not running on HTTPS. And that's because of, remember a couple weeks ago I had you all watch the video from Google I/O about HTTPS and why it's so important. So the reason I love Firebase is that you can get free HTTPS and free hosting up to a certain level. Okay, and you can look in here if you want. I'm just going to tell you this is another option I think that's good to think about. And you can see, let's see, because it offers a real-time database, it offers cloud functions, something that, by the way, if you're going to DevFest, you may learn about. But here's what I'm talking about, which is you offer free hosting up to, and that's a pretty significant, right? The storage itself, the transfer is 10 gigs a month. That's a sizable site right there. Okay, so it's fairly easy to use. I've implemented it on a couple sites, like I said, lately that I've used, and I think it's really worth looking at. Okay, all right, so that should go in your notes. As I was thinking today, so I'm switching topics within class topics here. As I was looking at the end of the semester, I've already started modifying the content for Bootstrap 4, because if you heard me say before, in the past I've done Bootstrap 3, so we're going to be doing that. And I was looking at the end of the semester. So I really want you to understand that this concept, and boy, this needs to go in your notes, is that I am traveling starting October 12th, right? So your final project is due the night that I will actually be in New York. Google's sending me for 4 days to New York to go to actually run a Women Tech Makers Summit in New York. So I will be gone. So if you want my feedback on your Project Zero, that is an important, very important part of this course, you're going to want to submit it the night before and so I almost thought of changing this to the 11th, but I decided to leave it the way it is. But I wanted you to know that if you'd like me to preview your Project Zero, you would want to submit that on the 11th or sometime before early morning on the 12th, because what I will do is I will get up on the 12th and I will grade any work submitted for all my classes before I get on the plane at noon. And then I won't be available until late that evening in New York. So just keep that in mind, okay, is that that's true. Okay, so have that in your notes. I want to make sure you understand. And again, that project is worth 25% of this course, so make sure you are giving it its just time. And we're going to be talking about it actually starting, in this case, in our next item. You'll see this through the rest of this courses. Every week, I generally have you work on something related to the project. Last thing I will end with is that I've talked to a couple of you about the way this essential training went as far as the Google Drive, and it helped me when next time I run this class be more clear with the students about this, because the idea was never to have you move files from the local to the Google Drive, and part of that reason is that I cannot tell when I look at the activity for this. And I think this is here. So this, one of the things I look for is the activity that happens here. And so when you're just moving files, that doesn't work. So next time I'm going to be much more clear with the students about that. So I guess my point about this is that I appreciate the students that came and talked to me, because I put a note in their class or in their lecture about this, is that I wasn't really able to see what I'd hoped to see. But it helped me also clarify what I would change about that. Okay, I think this is enough for this week 6, the first item. So, oh, did I go over this? Yeah, I did. I went over UI UX, right? Yeah, I did. And then I talked a little more about branches and showed you how to walk through that, but I will modify the branch content. Okay, talk to you later. Bye.